Breaking news this morning, the Washington Post has published the surveillance video showing the final moments of Irvo Otieno. He's the black man who died in police custody at a Virginia hospital earlier this month. And we do want to warn you, the video is tough to watch. The hospital surveillance video shows Otieno being dragged into an admissions room in handcuffs and leg irons. Several deputies and hospital staff then piling on top of him until his body goes limp. Prosecutors intended on making this video public today, but defense attorneys were trying to block it, arguing it would taint the jury pool. In the article, the Washington Post says they obtained it by clicking on a series of Dropbox links in the prosecutor's court filing. We do want to clarify that NBC News does not know how the video has been edited or what was taken out. Otieno was in custody after allegedly assaulting 3 officers, and investigators were told he became combative while being admitted to the mental health facility. 7 Henrico County Sheriff's deputies and 3 hospital staff members have been charged with second-degree murder in Otieno's death. Attorneys for 2 of the deputies have previously said that their clients are innocent. A grand jury is expected to meet this morning to review the case.
Now, you saw some of the video. There are so many instances where this type of thing happens. Police are called to quote-unquote help a person, a man or a woman, who is in the midst of a mental health crisis. And people who are in the midst of a mental health crisis, they're not people you can talk with and reason with generally like you can a person who is not, and when they are not in a mental health crisis. And as soon as anything smells of noncompliance from a cop, they instantly go into cop mode, which is we must get them to comply or up until they die mode. This gentleman was taken to a hospital, and he was not in his right mind, it seems. Cops didn't like that. They take him to jail. Then I think they took him to the hospital again, from what I read, and we're going to read more together here. And that's when they ended up unaliving him. Egregiously. Not one person, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, but 10 people helped to unalive this gentleman. Where are the good cops? People are saying, oh, there's just a few bad apples. All it took was one cop to pull him or herself back from that egregious assault on this gentleman who needed mental health support. And that person, that cop, has a gun. Protect and serve. Pull yourself back away from all those people violently attacking this innocent man, and if need be, use any force necessary to protect and serve this human being from the animals also known as cops. What's a 4-letter word for animals? Really mean animals. Cops. Now let's go over some details here. New video shows Virginia deputies piling handcuffed black man who later died. 7 sheriff's deputies and 3 staff from a state hospital have been charged with murder in the death of Irvo Otieno, 28 years old. Only 28 years old, and his knife was snuffed away by the police. And 3 staff as well. New surveillance footage from a Virginia state hospital shows at least 10 sheriff's deputies and hospital workers piling on top of Irvo Otieno, a handcuffed black man who died of asphyxia soon after. A Virginia prosecutor has charged 7 deputies and 3 hospital staff members with second-degree murder in the 28-year-old's death, and more charges may be coming. Will justice finally be served? Usually not. Again, charges and convictions are 2 very different things, and police are almost never convicted. But charges are at least the beginning. Continuing. The video of the surveillance footage, which the Post edited down to 9 minutes, begins with Henrico County Sheriff's deputies and hospital staff dragging Otieno like he's an animal, not a human being, into a room in the hospital on March 6th. He is wearing handcuffs and leg irons. Whose bright idea was it to put him in leg irons? Completely dehumanized. He is in a mental health crisis, for God's sakes. And someone in a mental health crisis, if you try to constrain and restrain them, that could set them off even more. And of course, for the cops, they're hammers and everything looks like a nail. And they love that. They get off on that stuff. A nail. Damn, I love this. In a video I recently published, a cop says that in the video as 7 officers are beating up a guy on a bike. His crime was he didn't have a headlight and he was riding on the side of the road, not on the sidewalk. And you can hear one cop say, I love this. They are sick motherfuckers. Are all psychopaths cops, or are all cops psychopaths? The eternal question. Well, the police culture attracts psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissists. Look at the fruits. Look at any of these videos. You know your own interactions as well with cops. They're not okay in the head. He is wearing handcuffs and leg irons, but at least 10 people pile on top of him at various times throughout the video as he lies on the ground. The video ends with hospital staff administering CPR. Now that's a hospital that I want to go to. First they kill you, then they try to bring you back. That's called I think that's called the Lazarus principle. Like where Jesus raised the dead, so they're attempting to do the same thing in their own special way. That's fucked up. The video ends with hospital staff administering CPR and using a defibrillator in an unsuccessful attempt to save his life. And they said, oh, we didn't get to tase him, which is electrocution, by the way. That's all tasing is. It's a fancy term for electrocution at a certain level to another human being. Now, of course, defibrillators can bring a person back sometimes, but at least they got to tase him afterwards. And the Henrico County Sheriff's Office did not return a request for comment. Of course not. They would have to take responsibility and accountability. The Post said the hospital surveillance video footage shows staff draping a white sheet over Otieno an hour and 8 minutes after they began resuscitation efforts. And Cabell Baskerville, the Virginia prosecutor who charged the 7 deputies and 3 staff members, said Otieno died of asphyxiation. How many times does this have to happen, ladies and gentlemen, before we the people say enough? And I am saying it personally to you now. It's enough. It has been enough for 50 years now. I have a petition I'm going to be publishing shortly. Please sign it. My goal is to get to 1 million+ signatures. We will give this to every local, state, and federal politician and demand they give us immediately police reform. No studies. You know what? Their studies could be this. Go to YouTube. That's your studies. Pick one of tens of thousands of videos to see what the state of emergency is in our country, the United States of America. So much of the time, the federal government, I don't care who's in office. I don't care if it's Obama, Trump, Biden, whoever's in office, they're not looking at the problems we have right in front of our face. They'll give billions of dollars to other countries, but what about what's going on in front of our face? Oh, we're too busy addressing things in other countries. Okay, you could take care of things. You could do more than one fucking thing at a time, government, right? You got enough bureaucrats in it. This is an emergency. It is a national emergency. And since I have been in this work, ladies and gentlemen, since I have activated my channel fully about 2 months ago, it is so much worse. The state of emergency with the police state is 1,000 times worse than if you just watch the news. If you watch mainstream media, you see a fraction of it. People send me videos, links to stories from all over the United States now. However, what I see is a fraction of the reality because remember, only a tiny, tiny amount of the police assaults, harassments, shredding of our constitutional rights, and murders are actually caught on video. So put that in context there. It's way worse than I realized just doing this work and way worse than all of us realize, because only a fraction of the actual violence and crime by police is caught on camera. Now, I'm going to show you another video here, and this is from CBS 6 News. And I'm going to let this run entirely in its uninterrupted state here. And then I'll give some final thoughts at the end. So put in your comments, what do you think here? And what can be done? What needs to be done? Okay, watch this.
2 of the 7 Henrico deputies charged with second-degree murder and the death of an inmate who died while in custody are now out on bond.
Attorneys reveal what they say a videotape shows in the moments leading up to the death of an inmate as the deputies charged in his death appear in court.
Well, I think it's very important that we see that footage as soon as possible. It's certainly far too soon to point fingers at any individual.
And we take a look at what happens when somebody experiencing a mental health crisis is taken by police under an emergency custody order to the hospital. Why might they be taken to the jail from there?
Senator Creed Deeds asking for better facilities and better training.
It's so important that before we make too many judgments, we found out exactly what happened. To me, this story speaks to the urgency of getting crisis intervention training for 100% of our law enforcement officers.
The CBS 6 News at 6 starts right now.
We have complete in-depth coverage on that story for you tonight. Good evening. I'm Janine Samuels.
And I'm Bill Fitzgerald, anchoring our coverage live from Henrico County Jail West, where those deputies worked. It's also where Irvo Otieno was taken into custody by officers as a potential burglary suspect on March 3rd. Then, March 6th, after observing him, those officers put Otieno under an emergency custody order and took him to Central State Hospital for evaluation. They say he became combative and was brought to a local jail where he later died during the intake process. The sheriff's deputies involved in the incident were in court today on second-degree murder charges. We start our team coverage with senior reporter Wayne Koval to break down what happened inside the courtroom today and the evidence being considered. Some of the details Wayne learned you might find disturbing. Wayne?
Well, Bill, as family members of the jail deputies walked out of Dinwiddie Courthouse this morning after seeing their loved ones on a courtroom video screen, 2 of those 7 deputies in jail learned that they had made bond and would be getting out from behind bars. The arraignment also brought out more details about what had happened.
The Commonwealth Attorney has taken a very aggressive position here.
7 Henrico County Sheriff's deputies, each facing a second-degree murder charge, had their first appearance in court Wednesday morning. Carrie Bowen represents Deputy Jermaine Branch.
Our client has been there for 24 years.
Judge Joseph Teefee granted Deputy Jermaine Branch and Deputy Bradley Deasy bond. But during the arraignment process, more details about what happened to 28-year-old Irvo Otieno, both at the Henrico County Jail and Central State Hospital, came out. Commonwealth's Attorney Ann Baskerville said the preliminary cause of death is asphyxiation.
He was held down on the ground, prone on the ground, for 12 minutes by all 7 of our defendants charged here, including this one. So much so that they smothered him, and they smothered him to death.
Baskerville says the state medical examiner will now need to view 2 videotapes, one at Henrico County Jail, which she says shows a naked Otieno being tackled and struck by 5 deputies, and the 12-minute video from Central State Hospital, where Otieno had his hands handcuffed in front of him with shackles on his feet, and Baskerville says where 7 sheriff's deputies had Otieno on the ground. Baskerville says there is also concern about 2 injections Otieno received at Central State Hospital during or after the altercation.
He stopped moving and probably died before the injection was given.
Bowen says some deputies believe the interjections contributed to Oteneo's death.
I think that's what some of these people that are charged believe. But I have not talked to the staff at Central State that saw that. At least the way it was told to me was once the injections, 2 injections, and once that was administered, there was no more. I mean, he was not responsive even.
Defense attorney Edward Nickel represents Deputy Bradley Deasy, told me he was glad Deasy made bail. Nickel also tells me he believes the charges were made prematurely and will now work to clear Deasy's name.
It is extremely clear and extremely alarming.
During the altercation at Central State Hospital, Commonwealth's attorney Ann Baskerville tells me there were Central State employees watching and some did join in. More charges may be coming soon. Bill?
Thank you, Wayne. And as for the two deputies that were granted bond, our Tyler Lane was outside Meherrin River Regional Jail in Brunswick County when they were released. He's live now with those details tonight. Tyler?
And Bill, we were the only news crew here at the jail today when those two deputies were released on bond right here through these doors behind me. Now, we asked both of those men for a response to the claims against them, but neither spoke with us. Henrico County deputies Jermaine Branch and Bradley Deasy were held here at the Meherrin River Regional Jail in Brunswick County after being charged with second-degree murder and the death of Irvo Otieno. Around 2:15 Wednesday afternoon, they were both released on bond, with people waiting to pick them up. Branch was first to be released, and he was covered with a scarf as we approached with our camera. Is there anything that you want to say about the charges against you? Can you tell us what happened leading up to Otieno's death?
Can you respect my family and move?
Is there a message that you want to say to the victim's family? We gave Branch a final opportunity to respond, but he got into the car without making a comment. Less than 10 minutes later, Deasy was also released through what appears to be a garage door of the facility. He was shielded by a jacket as we approached. Mr. Deasy, is there anything you want to say about the charges against you? Can you tell us what happened leading up to Otieno's death? Do you have a message for the victim's family? We just want to give you an opportunity to respond to the charges. Deasy entered a vehicle and left the jail without making a comment. Now, the 5 other deputies that are charged in this incident are still being held in custody right here at the Meherrin River Regional Jail in Brunswick County. And Bill, I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Tyler. State Senator Creigh Deeds, a longtime advocate for the improvement of Central State Hospital specifically and behavioral health resources there, is speaking out about the death of Irvo Otieno, who was admitted there last week. Our Elizabeth Holmes spoke with Deeds today.
Senator Deeds says he immediately began reaching out to law enforcement and behavioral health leaders in the area to figure out what may have happened at Central State and where things went wrong. He says even though the current conditions of the hospital are not ideal, he does not think they may have contributed to Otieno's death.
I think the family and the community deserves answers. We need to figure out exactly what happened, why it happened.
Senator Creigh Deeds sharing concerns over what happened at Central State Hospital, leading to the death of 28-year-old Irvo Otieno, a mental health patient transported there March 6th. The story is personal to the senator. His son, who dealt with mental health issues, brutally stabbed him, then died by suicide in 2013.
Not be so crisis-driven that we try to keep a focus on this and keep a face on the problems.
When we interviewed Creigh Deeds back in 2018, he noted the age and condition of the hospital structure, saying it was, quote, held together by duct tape. Years later, despite little improvement, he says the employees are doing the best they can.
I don't know if the current condition of Central State Hospital can bear any of the blame for what happened to this young man.
The incident, he says, highlights a need for training.
To me, this story speaks to the urgency of getting crisis intervention training for 100% of our law enforcement officers, because so often when they are called out to confront the public, somebody in the public, there's a mental health implication, and you just need the tools that crisis intervention training provides.
Senator Deeds says construction for a new Central State Hospital is set to be completed in 2026. He said he hopes this incident and any investigation does not delay that opening date. In the studio, I'm Elizabeth Holmes, CBS 6 News.
And so we're asking questions about why Mr. Otieno was taken to a hospital originally to receive treatment for his mental health crisis, but then arrested and transported to the Henrico jail. Our Melissa Hippolyte joins us now from the studio with insights from two experts. Melissa?
Well, Bill, I talked to a psychiatrist and former law enforcement officer about what the process is when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis and is taken to the hospital under an emergency custody order, and why they might end up in jail. When Henrico police responded to a home on Fordson Road at 11:34 a.m. on March 3rd for a possible burglary call, they identified Irvo Otieno as a potential suspect. A spokesperson for the police department said officers used their crisis intervention training and identified that the person was experiencing a mental health crisis. So they issued an emergency custody order and transported him to the crisis receiving center at Henrico Doctors Hospital. Once there, Otieno would have been met by the hospital's psych team and medical team, according to Dr. Martin Buxton, the former chief of psychiatry at Chippenham and Johnston Willis hospitals.
Somebody would try to calm him, talk him down.
Buxton, who is unconnected to this case, says that if that didn't work and the individual was combative, the staff would have restrained them.
If somebody was violent and you could not slow them down, they're tearing up the emergency room, you would restrain them and try to medicate them.
In the case of Otieno, Henrico police say he became physically assaultive toward officers at the hospital, so they arrested him and transported him to the Henrico County Jail, where he was charged with assault on a law enforcement officer, disorderly conduct in a hospital, and vandalism. Would you expect in a situation like what I've described that the staff would have at least tried to put a drug in them that ultimately would have calmed them?
No question.
We don't know if the hospital staff did or did not give or attempt to give a calming medication. Mark Bong, who used to work in law enforcement and is currently an attorney in Henrico who often represents police officers, says he wonders why the officers decided the best course of action was to take Otieno to the jail.
Someone who is in a hospital setting who then gets placed in a jail setting is probably getting insufficient treatment, especially on the weekend. The availability of medication and treatment are going to be greatly reduced in a jail environment than they would be in a hospital environment.
Jails are clearly not the optimal place for a psychiatric patient. They could be re-traumatized, they could be stirred up, the noise, the lack of capacity to sleep. All those things go against mental health.
Buxton says it's possible there were no psych beds available at Henrico Doctors or other hospitals.
Was there a bed at Forest? If not, were they trying to get another bed in town and they couldn't find one because Central State used to be the designated backup? And whether Central State had a bed. Well, they may have decided they couldn't manage them there, or they didn't have a bed there, and there was no psychiatric bed available in town. I mean, that happens.
Lots of questions still. We have asked a variety of entities in Henrico County, including the police and mental health services, about what exactly happened in this situation, and we are still waiting to hear back. Bill?
Thank you, Melissa. And CBS 6 will continue to follow this story as it develops. You can watch our updates and all of our in-depth coverage just by downloading the free CBS 6 News app.
Now, finally, some reporters actually doing real journalism. However, we see there are more questions than answers. There was an absolute systemic breakdown with the police and the state hospital. How could 10 people attack this man in a place that was supposed to protect this man and give him the dignified treatment he needed to get through this mental health challenge to go on to live a productive and healthy life? Didn't happen. Number one, because police were involved in a mental health situation. Do not fucking call police for mental health crisis. Now, the original suspicion of how police got involved is it was a suspected burglary. I haven't heard a thing about that it was an actual burglary. I haven't heard anything about that at all. So was it even the right guy? What was he doing? And the police identified that he was having a mental health crisis with their fancy training, their special mental health intervention training. It doesn't take fucking training to see when someone is in extreme crisis. We're human beings. And just because someone may not be perhaps complying with every single order an authoritarian cop gives, does that give a cop a right to beat the shit out of you? And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cops and 3 hospital staff to beat the shit out of you? This guy was at the jail, sent to the hospital, back to the jail. This is messed up. Call your local politicians, your state, your federal politicians. Demand police reform, as I am doing now, and stay tuned for the petition that I am creating. Let's get 1 million signatures as soon as humanly possible, which will be another tool as we, the people, take back our country from the authoritarianism that has been infecting it for decades now. And unless we do this, peacefully, of course, unless we do this, it will just continue to get worse. And we will see 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 and more videos of gentlemen like Irvo, who are not just failed by the system, but egregiously unalived by it, to use that more friendly for this platform term, so this video doesn't get, you know what I mean. I am Leroy Truth. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like and share my video. Ask all of your friends to subscribe to my channel as well. Let's get the word out, because my sole mission is to bring about actual effective police reform in our country. But no man or woman can do it alone. We need to collectively, we the people. But it also doesn't take 100 million people to create change. We get 1 million strong, and we will do it. And I also thank all of the other people who are on YouTube helping to hold people accountable. Josh for Accountability for All, James Freeman, Brian from Here's the Deal, and Denver Metro Audits. I mean, the list goes on and on. I would have to go on for a long time for everyone. Constitution State, Tennessee Audits. There are so many doing extremely important work. Lackluster, of course. And together, we're not just watching YouTube videos. We need to take peaceful action to assure that we change this immediately. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your commitment to bringing America to a free place once again. This is Leroy Truth. I'll see you next time.